Hey everyone, Dior here, and this is Langrisser Mobile. If you've seen some of my update videos, you might have seen this game being played in the background. This here is Apex Arena, which is their latest PvP mode. It goes through seasons. We're actually just starting season 3, so I've done my 5 placement matches and a few other matches. As you can see, my win-loss rate, I'm not that great. There's rankings, which right now I'm actually kind of okay, but that's going to change. It's because everyone's right now started at no points and they're just kind of grinding up now. And as for the tiers, it goes from Bronze 3 all the way up to it goes Bronze 3 down to 1, and then it goes to the next rank, and then the next rank, and then it reaches Langrisser. I ended season 1 and as a silver 1. I ended season 2 as a gold 2, and after doing my placement matches, I ended up being in gold 3. Your placement matches will place you based off your win-loss ratio and what your previous ranking was in the previous season, which is kind of good because it ensures that top tier players are not just automatically wrecking the lower tier people. That being said, the matchmaking still will sometimes put you against people you cannot take. Which is just how it is. I'm probably not going to go into too much detail about the mechanics. It's kind of hard to commentate this type of stuff because it's either I have to assume that no one's played this before and I have to explain everything, or I assume that people watching this already know what's going on, and so I'm just going to kind of just commentate it as best as I can and just kind of go from there. Before we start, so the neat thing about this is it saves all your matches, so you can actually do a replay, which you can pause and rewind and things like that. So I'm going to be going through a few of the matches and see how it goes. I've attempted to record this a number of times, and I've just never been happy with the commentary. So hopefully this goes a little bit better. If not, I don't intend on doing too many of these. It's just something that kind of changed the pace. Also, it's a new season starting, so I figured it was a good time as any to kind of throw a few of these videos out. As I've already pointed out in my rankings, I am not a top tier player, and anyone that's familiar with the game and sees my box, they probably will realize that I am not built for the meta. So, with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into the team formations. This thing is kind of neat because you can actually get other players' characters and use them for every week. I don't do that. I just use my own units. Anyone that's familiar with how I usually play any sort of game, if there's access to female characters, I try my best to see if I can go through the game using only them. And Langrisser is no different. As you can see from this box, I use nothing but female characters. This kind of limits my options as far as like tanks are concerned. Well, specifically tanks. There are also a few other options that are kind of left out because of this choice. And certain factions are just not as viable with this restriction in play. That being said, I'll go ahead and quickly go over this. The standard 15 character box for Apex, you usually go 2 tanks, 4 healers, and then the rest is DPS and a mixture of like various faction buffs, which will efficiently buff your entire party. My box is actually 3 tanks. I'm trying this. I threw an additional tank because a lot of what Season 2 ended up being for me was I would have to pick a tank first thing, because with 2 tanks that means during the ban pick phase I would have to pick one, or else they'll both be banned. And what would end up happening is I would pick my tank first, and then they would immediately ban my 2 faction buffers for Princess faction, and so I pretty much went through all Season 2 without faction buffs. I had a half buff, which is from Estelle, which was still pretty useful. I was impressed with how far I got with just a half buff, but I want to change things up a little bit and see if I can actually use a faction buff for once. So with an extra tank in, I have a little bit more flexibility on my options. So that being said, I have Estelle, which I'll go ahead and just show real quick. She has 6 stars, clock enchantments. She does have her first awakening, so she has 6 skills. And then, let's see, I have Freya somewhere in here. Yep, Freya 6 stars. Pretty much designed to do spiky damage, so anything that hits her, she kind of reflects a bunch of damage. Or, they'll be immune and she won't be doing much of anything. And then my newest tank that I just added in was Amelia. If I can find her. There she is. She's actually my first tank that can actually guard against magic. All my other tanks have been physical only, which has been kind of meh. I haven't got to use her too much, but she's actually been she's been doing reasonably well, so I'm actually been pretty impressed. Her build is pretty much just all about building up end defense and defense. And I alternate her soldiers between Zealots and Trent Guards. As for my 4 healers, it's standard kit. You got Liana, you got Chloe, or Close, Iris, and Tiaris. And then for faction buffs, I have Shafaniel, Luna, and I also have Zerida, who I finally got to 6-star. Zerida can only really buff herself and someone else. I don't really get too many opportunities to actually use Zerida because the opponent usually bans her first. And then I just have a lot of mages. I do have some physical DPS like Claret, but I tend to lean towards mages, which tend to be banned. Everyone except for Rachel and everyone except for Rachel is Rachel and Amelia are 6 stars right now. Amelia and Rachel are 5 stars. Some of these matches I'll be showing, Rachel will be 4 stars, and Shafaniel will be 5 stars because they just got recently promoted. So that's kind of the gist of the box, and we're gonna go ahead and just dive right into this. So be right back. So these first few matches are gonna be kind of straightforward. I'm gonna be showing my defeats and my victories. My defeats are gonna be pretty easy to show how I messed up. For this one, this is actually the one match where I actually got to use Zerida. And unfortunately, I completely screwed up and pretty much squandered the opportunity. For those who are not familiar with the ban pick stuff, essentially you alternate both sides. You'll start with banning one person, and then you'll alternate between banning 2 people and picking a character, going back and forth until you're down to just 5 players on both sides. So like I mentioned, I'm doing this 3 tank 4 healer strategy. It's a little iffy. You generally don't want too many tanks or too many healers because you can get in a situation where you have just nothing but tanks or nothing but healers and not really much in the form of DPS. I generally don't have too much of that issue now. At least from what I've seen so far, it hasn't really been an issue. Also, this was my first match with Amelia apparently, but that doesn't really matter in this case. The biggest issue when I saw this box was like, I need to deal with this Zerida. If this Zerida gets out of control, it's going to be over. And unfortunately, I did not do so well in this match. Spoiler warning. So this is my first run with Zerida. I went ahead and not bothered with a faction buff, and went straight into getting Alizar's, which kills my troops and increases my attack power and all sorts of good stuff. And at this point, my coverage is around here, and I do have Iris here, so I can do teleport and kind of get myself into a position to go ahead and get a kill in. Generally what you do is you do Alizar's, which will kill all your troops, and follow up with Killing Blow, which if you have no troops alive, when you use this, you will bypass guard and attack the general or the character rather than the troops. So it's like a assassination move essentially. So I was kind of watching, seeing how this player was setting up the characters, and the plan was taking advantage of the fact that I'm the first player and hoping to get a quick kill on Zerida. Obviously, he does something similar. She does have a faction buff active thanks to Bozel. I went in with a Dark Hold just to kind of do some damage. I wasn't and do some debuffs essentially. You can't really debuff Zerida when this effect is active. She's immune. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and teleport in, and next round I go first and I'll win. But this guy here has an ability called Regroup, which heals and gives you an additional action if you have no troops alive, which Zerida didn't, so she got immediate action, killed my Zerida, and I pretty much gave up at that point. There was just no way I was going to win. Zerda backed away direct. It was a perfect position that I could put, and she retreated back to the tank. I was not going to be able to get through those 2 tanks before Zerda killed everybody, because essentially she would just go use that ability again, kill her troops off, and kill another one of my units over and over again, because it bypasses guard. So, it is what it is. It was my first match in Season 3, and it wasn't a great one. So my second match went a little bit better, but you might want a few things to note. When you do the replay, it shows everything. During the match itself, I don't see the player name, the character portrait, or their levels, and I don't see any of the characters' classes or levels either. So the first thing that came to... So imagine seeing this box with no classes or levels, and I was like, what is this box? Like, this box has one healer, one primary healer, which is Almeda. Has has technically 2 tanks, or 3 tanks. Usually you don't use Bernhard for as a tank, but you can if you need to. And I was like, I mean, I saw things that were kind of, you know, meta and usual, but I was like, this person has like no healer. I could ban this healer, and I could ban Rachel and Almeda, and he would have no heals besides the effect from Juggler. So I was really confused about this box, but I still kind of played it a little bit cautiously. Like, one of the reasons you might see something where there's like very few healers or very few tanks is it might be like a rush down type strategy, where they kind of try to rush you down with just pure DPS and just kill you as quickly as possible. I was kind of thinking that because I saw, you know, I don't even remember this character's name, Hein. Hein has teleport and can teleport people ahead, and so I was thinking, oh, maybe that's the plan. Just teleport someone in and do a bunch of damage, like anti-heal with Bernhardt, and then follow up with a bunch of AoE. I did not know what was going on. So, standard thing, since, like I mentioned before, since I have 3 tanks, I can pick something besides a tank for my first draw. So I would pick one of my faction buffers. I've been picking Luna right now, mainly because her awakened, I fully awakened her. So she has 6 skill points, and she has her awakened skill, which can help with mobility, which makes up for some of my slower characters by quite a bit. And so it's been something I've just been messing around with. Most people who play Luna usually use her as a flyer, not an archer, but there's not many very good archers back when I started playing this, so that's kind of the reason that I've been kind of using Luna as an archer. And I just wanted to change things up a little bit. Also, there's just so many female flyer characters that I didn't really need another one. So yeah, I was kind of just banning characters that I don't want to deal with, like Yulia, Rachel. Obviously I went for Almeda, so I was like, alright, he has no heals now besides Juggler's passive ability. And at this point I was like, okay, I could just literally just wear him down and just endure the nukes. I was a little concerned by the number of like AoEs, because like I mentioned before, during play I can't see the levels. So 2 tanks, then a bunch of mages. And mine's more of a kind of a standard. I have 2 healers in my draw, but I can kind of use Chloe here as DPS. I kind of use her for Starglow AoE. And once you actually get into the match, you actually see what character you're playing against, or what player you're playing against, their level, and all that stuff. So I was actually really confused in this match because he's level 60 as a player, which means his max level should be 61. And he had level 70s. Talking on the Discord, I eventually realized what this guy did was he pretty much grabbed nothing but mercenaries, which mercenaries can be level 70. And he essentially grabbed a bunch of other people's characters and threw them in his box and kind of just dove right into PvP. And you know what? I respect that. I mean, even if you're not good at PvP at all and your characters are not built for PvP, you might as well do the placement matches. So yeah, I usually do AoEs even though there's a Juggler, because even though Juggler will heal most of the damage usually, it doesn't heal Juggler himself, so I kind of just use that to wear him down. Also, Starglow removes 1 buff, so I kind of see if I can remove the guard sometimes. It's a low chance, but it's better than nothing. Also, I just kind of had the spare action to do. This aura here is the awakened skill for Luna, and anyone that's a ground unit gets extra movement essentially when going through it. It's very, very useful. So yeah, just gonna point out level 70, level 70, level 69, level 60, level 60. So this Lambda and this Gizarov cannot do anything to me. Literally cannot do anything. It's just, my characters have such high M defense, and I have Luna, which provides even more defense against magic. But I still played this kind of normally, like as if the person was level 70, just to kind of, well, use it as a bit of a warm-up, and kind of just to be careful. You can never be too sure. I've encountered people who have had, you know, high-level characters, but they were weaker than like my level 50 characters, just simply because they weren't properly geared. So, anyway, White Dragon Breath. Yeah, as you can see, it did no damage. It did 2 damage to Luna, which means it did 1 damage to her and 1 damage to her troops. Also, I forgot to turn on animations, so I'll go ahead and do that now. To be honest, there wasn't much to show in the previous battle, because there was literally only 1 fight. But yeah, level 70 here. Lightning Flash. Juggler was softened up by the AoE. I was doing extra damage, and all sorts of good stuff. And even if he survived the first hit, he was not going to survive the follow-up, so... pretty safe. Basel here did actual some respectable damage because he's level 70, or 69 I think. Nothing to show here, just Roar finishing off this level 60. Yeah, 1 damage. Not really a threat at all. Tornado, it's not going to do anything. It's going to debuff me, but I've already been... the debuff is hardly a concern. Went ahead and healed to full. So like I said, despite the levels, I went ahead and just played this normally. Even the pets were only level 60 as well, so literally even Chloe can handle them with spear guards. But it was such a weird situation. I just, even though, like I said, it's not maybe the most interesting match, but I kind of used it as a warm-up to kind of get used to doing movement and stuff. Because PvP matches, you move only 1 unit at a time instead of a full team. So it could be a bit of a change if you've just been doing nothing but PvE the entire time. And the person didn't give up. Dragonis played through the entire match, so you know, kudos to him. Alright, so this time I'm actually player 2, which means I get first ban. So I went ahead and banned Leonhardt. Leonhardt's just like kind of a pain to deal with. He can teleport and just do a bunch of AoE damage and then get an extra action and do more AoE damage and possibly stun you. He's just someone I don't want to deal with, so I usually ban him first if I see him. Generally the meta tanks, the top tier tanks are usually Landius and Juggler, so no surprise you're going to see usually one or both in these matchups. They're both male characters, so that's why I don't use them. But yeah, pretty standard stuff. If they don't ban my Claret, I usually grab Claret and kind of go from there. Claret's a 5-star Claret that's a flyer, has a lot of coverage, which can be helpful for kind of limiting the opponent's movements and things like that. And also Claret's just really good at just killing things. Even tanks. So you generally in matchups, one of the most important thing is kind of recognizing the threats of the opposing force and what can kill your tanks or what can bypass your tanks and so forth. So in this matchup, it was a healer, Ozil, who's essentially a mage debuffer, and then 3 tanks. So that's my opponent. Something else to note, for those who are not familiar, Amelia here has a self-res. That's a one use per battle. This Landius has a self-res that's 1 use per battle unless you can negate passives. And then there's of course Juggler. Every time you hit him, he heals everyone around him. You got Buzzle here, who's going to essentially do a bunch of magic damage and do a whole lot of debuffs. His special abilities literally just give more debuffs to people. And then we got Leone here, who's going to be doing all the healing and gives extra actions, and Gossipal, which will buff a unit. All the unit stats and make them immune to all status effects for essentially 2 rounds. Pretty much the Gossipal is for the Amelia because none of those faction buffs actually apply to her. And then my units over here real quick. I mentioned Claret, you've kind of seen Luna already a few times. TRS here is really useful because of attack blessing, which increases your damage dealt by 30% and reduces damage taken by half when attacking. So add that on top of just the amount of damage Claret already does. It's just really good for killing tanks. Close here is here to provide additional healing support, as well as to kind of help remove debuffs and remove the opponent's buffs with Starglow. And then my main tank is Freya. Now, a key thing to note is Freya can only guard against physical, so Bozol kind of has free reign on targeting things. But I am taking advantage of the fact that Luna's special ability is an aura that reduces magic damage. So it's really going to be all about dealing with this Bozol. The tanks themselves can potentially do some damage, but for the most part the real threat is Bozol. All the tanks here are doing physical damage, and Freya is very good at dealing with physical damage. So, pretty standard. The maps in Apex are really nice. They're kind of a good size, and they're kind of varied, though some of them I generally don't do very well on. This one is pretty good. It has water in the middle, or it has, I guess, swamp in the middle, which can be hard for cavalry to get through. But I'm not using, well, I'm using a little bit of cavalry, but not much. Technically, TRS is a mounted unit. But yeah, pretty standard stuff right now that we're just going to slowly move in. I'm setting up Wind God Realm. Usually I wait to use something like Wind God Realm, but I've been activating ahead of time in PvP because it gives me that extra movement, which is really useful. It pretty much allows me to ignore terrain issues as well. So yeah, a neat thing about Chloe is she has her passive ability is she can give random immunities to everyone around her. It's very helpful. The opposing forces actually, besides Juggler here, or actually besides Juggler here, all of them kind of don't really move very quickly. So I have a little bit of free reign to kind of push in, and right now I'm trying to provoke this Bozol to essentially throw out his AoEs, and so I can counteract with my my cleansing, so I can get those debuffs out of the way. So there he goes. I provoke the black hole, which only hits 2 units. Does some damage, does some stats effects including silence, which is annoying. And then I moved in with Luna to go ahead and attack the Juggler. Juggler's pretty tanky, especially in water. But like I said, it's just to wear him down. And then the faction buff I have active does fixed damage based off a percentage, so it's very good at just whittling things down a little bit. And then I'm going to counter with a Starglow. Wear down even further, remove some buffs. I'm not concerned about the fact that Juggler's negating all of the damage. Even after he heals though, I'd still do that fixed damage from the Princess buff, so it's still very useful. The Leona here went ahead and did act again with on Bozol, so Bozol's about to attack again. He didn't proc anything for the black hole, so all he has left is this Dark Reaper, which is his primary single target. Does very good damage and bypasses magic. It bypasses a bit of the 30% of the person's magic defense, so it's very, very rough. So what I did is I went ahead and used Miracle here, which is a heal and a buff. That makes it so you take 15% less, 15 reduced damage taken by 15% and increased damage dealt by 15%. So I'm expecting this Bozol to go ahead and try to kill my Freya. And it wasn't 100% sure if this would work. It was my only chance of possibly surviving this. I was very concerned because I had this debuff that increased damage taken by 20%. So essentially I'm right now taking an additional 5% damage on top of whatever Bozol hits me with. Here it comes. Or I was expecting to go after the tank, but I ended up going after the Juggler here, completely wrecking him. Heal because of TR's passive. I'm back at full health. Get hit with Dark Reaper, which does a bunch of damage, but not enough. And this was out of the range of Luna's defense buff too. So Claret has some armor that does help reduce damage if she's at 100% health, and I think that's probably what saved her. So did get hit with a silence as a random debuff. It's a little annoying, but I've already taken out one of the 3 tanks. Unfortunately, the other 2 tanks, like I mentioned before, have a self-res. So essentially in this match, I had to kill essentially 5 tanks. So going in the heal, get her back to full. Because Bozol is going to once again try to this time it's just a regular attack, it's not Dark Scythe, so I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm fine. I'm now just kind of whittling down the next tank. I'm not going to be able to one-shot them, but they only have one healer, so I'm kind of just like, alright, I'm going to force you to use your heal, and then I'm going to keep hitting you. That's pretty much the plan. So yeah, I attacked with Freya to see how which of the tanks would guard. Thankfully, it was him. So I did a bunch of extra damage because he's a tank, but he's cavalry, and Lancers beat cavalry, and I also did some fixed damage, which was really nice. Moving in, just healing up, getting some buffs up, or cleansing some debuffs rather. To see how Amelia does. Amelia is immune to fixed damage, so all that extra spiky damage is not doing anything, unfortunately. But I'm still able to tank it. It's all physical damage. Freya's very, very tanky against physical. So I'm going to go ahead and move down, see if I can do some work. So Trent guards are super tanky. And they get an additional buff if they're at 100% health, but since she wasn't at 100% health, they didn't get that buff, so it was a little bit easier to hit. Also, Amelia, if she has higher defense than the opponent and has a certain percentage of health, she will attack first. So that's what happened there. Amelia attacked first, and then I attacked. Usually the attacker usually has the advantage and attacks first. So yeah, wearing down Landius. Amelia has died once, I believe, already, so now she doesn't have a self-res. I kind of lost track there. I went and reapplied Attack Blessing, so I'm ready to go ahead and kill some more tanks. That Bozo is still alive, unfortunately. I can't even go after Bozo, really, until I deal with all these tanks. And right now I'm immune to all fixed damage as well, thanks to Chloe's special skill. She has a unique skill that essentially makes it so she cleanses 5 debuffs and makes everyone immune to fixed damage, and restores 50% HP every turn for 2 turns. So I went ahead and did what's it called? Lightning Flash. If Lightning Flash does not kill, I get another action, but my attack will be at 50%. Now I went ahead and looped around. For some reason I thought I was going to be able to attack Landius again, but I screwed up, so the other tank guarded for him. But it's not the end of the world, it's just going to delay things a bit. So he went and stayed in place so I can get a little bit of extra healing. Then I'm going to go ahead and attack with Chloe. Chloe actually does a little bit of magic damage, which does a lot better against physical tanks. So, they only got 1 tank left. Bozel is going to finally kill off Claret. I wasn't at full health, unfortunately, so that was enough to finish her off. I didn't have any of the extra damage reduction. Alright, no tanks left. Down to this. Unfortunately, Act Again got off cooldown, so Bozel's going to hit me again. I went ahead and healed Freya to full just to try to hopefully tank the next attack. He was also immune to fixed damage for some reason. Dark Reaper just barely survived it. And that's all that matters. I don't really fully understand why Bozel went after Freya. Bozel was immune to fixed damage, so Freya literally cannot do anything to him, and Freya can't block magic. So literally, Freya should have been kind of focusing on other characters and probably taking them out, even though Luna was kind of protecting them as well. So I don't really know what the plan there was. I backed Freya away just to kind of not get her killed. No reason to waste the effort. Black Hole was off cooldown, so I got hit with a bunch of debuffs. And then I Aurora Ring here, which removed all the debuffs. So I was hoping to take out Bozel with physical damage without... my faction buff was wearing off, but I went ahead and tried to take him out with just physical damage, but it didn't really work that way, unfortunately. But it still wore him down a little bit. As long as he's not 100%, he's going to do less damage. So, because sorceresses do extra damage based off being at 100%. I was not expecting brightness. This proposal was equipped with armor that has a chance of making it so he attacks just fine in melee range, even though he's ranged. Thankfully, it didn't really do too much. And his black hole actually procced a clock proc, which reset his cooldowns. But it's just not enough at this point. I can now move in to full health. You know, got attack blessing. Yeah, it's over at this point. Oh. Surprisingly, this person was not immune to fixed damage. At this point, the battle's over. I just kind of went through the motions, and then Jade here is going to go ahead and end things. Yep, there he goes. This poison miss is instant kill if you stay in it, so he just ran into it and ended it there. So, first probably real match we've had, and definitely have no complaints. I've been running into a lot of heavy tank builds, mainly because I don't really bother banning the tanks, and I kind of just work with that. But, alright, let's move on to the next match.